Doom v Vamus v Vamus Epicureans. This is the Marvel Epic Collection Podcast One-Shot Edition. I'm your host, Nick Smith, and I'm joined by...
Stojr from Stojr Shelf.
All right, we are participating in Kurtis Findlay's Epic Marvel Podcast Reading Club, and this one-shot is going to be our brief thoughts on today's issue, which is Uncanny X Men number 138, Elegy. And this is a recap issue. This basically retells the story of the X-Men from the beginning until Jean's death, ending with the announcement that Scott is leaving the group, and we see that Kitty Pryde has arrived to join the group. And that's pretty much it for an overview. Stojr, what are your thoughts?
I was going to sit back and see you try and do the overview of all of the X-Men in an overview fashion. I think this issue's slightly disappointing, but I will say, on the one hand, it's slightly disappointing because there's not much that happens. Kitty arrives at the door, Cyclops leaves. That's basically it, right? It's a recap of everything else. You get the funeral, you get a little bit of Lilandra sharing this sort of token with Jean's family, and that's the end of it. And from that point of view, there's just not a lot of content in here, and that's slightly disappointing. From a well done recap issue, from a person who owns things like the history of the Marvel Universe, I think the issue's great, right? It's all drawn by Byrne. It's written well by Claremont to go through all of this. It leaves almost no stone unturned, so it's thorough. So from that perspective, it's really good, and I like it. But it leaves you wanting more because it's like having it's like eating a donut that doesn't fill you up at all, right? Like that was good, it was tasty, but like it didn't do anything for me. What are your thoughts?
We have talked before about how Claremont does a good job of balancing these large cosmic storylines with a little downtime afterwards, and I do think this issue fits that. Now, for those of us who can read these comics in short succession, like in an Epic collection, this issue isn't necessary at all, right? But in the context of the 1980s, when it was first printed, this might be your only opportunity to learn the history of the X-Men and all of the continuity that came before. And in that respect, I do think this is a useful and a good issue. Not in the context of an Epic collection, but in the still in the context of an Epic collection because it's collecting everything, right? That's the goal. So I do want it here, even if it's not necessary for the story as we read it. But at the time, this would have been great for all that stuff that came before. I mean, Stojr, you and I have talked about growing up in the 90s before, and I remember the only way I learned the history of Spider-Man is they came out with this 4-issue miniseries, the Spider-Man Saga, and it was all word text with a couple of pictures here and there, but that's how I knew what came before. That's how I knew who Gwen Stacy was and the Green Goblin killing her and all that stuff, because I couldn't afford those old issues, right? So this is really great.
I think I had the Wolverine one of that actually. There was a Wolverine that was like a 4-issue miniseries, and I thought it was going to be a comic, and it was all prose with a couple things mixed in. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, I don't know how many of those they did, but there were a number of them for a bunch of different lines. Anyway, this is great for history, particularly at the time if you're buying these and trying to learn about the X-Men, particularly if you've been hearing about what, an award-winning run this is. That's probably going to get more people interested. And it also makes sense to have this story here in the wake of this tragedy. Scott would need time to reflect, and we get to partake in that reflection, right? It kind of reminds me of that Star Trek The Next Generation episode. I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan, Stojr, but there's an episode after Captain Picard was taken over by the Borg, right? We get this incredible 2-part story of is it Iborg or I don't remember. He becomes the Borg, and then when it's finally done, the writers realize that they couldn't just go back to business as usual with another one-off storyline, right? They needed to have that character Picard reflect and heal, and so he visits his brother's family at the vineyard in France that they own or something like that. It's a great series of episodes in Star Trek. The big cosmic thing, the reflection afterwards, and that's kind of what Claremont is doing here, right? And I don't think I can add any more to that.
Yeah, I mean, no argument. And again, as I do enjoy those things, it's just, you're always looking for that additional context. So yeah, I think it's well done. I agree with all your points. Makes perfect sense for it to be here from that perspective. But the selfish part of me is like, I want to know what the next thing is. As somebody who's reading all of that, either at the time or here. But yeah, I would have loved having all of this sort of recap all in one place. And you mentioned like other books that have done it, right? So there's been like the history of the Marvel Universe. There's those saga books that you were talking about, but there was also I don't know if I can grab one quickly. There was also right before Onslaught, each of um, the books that got rebooted. So Fantastic Four, Iron Man, Captain
Hmm.
America, and the Avengers had the this story like the legend. I think they were all called that, but it was basically like a recap book where it went through and had pictures and kind of told you all about the character and their history and had covers in there and milestone issues and all sorts of things like that, timelines. They were doing a lot of that sort of playing with like CGI graphics back then for some of this stuff. So it looks awful in retrospect, but at the time it looked kind of cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I enjoyed those things. So in some ways I'm talking myself out of what I said earlier, but I guess my point is like when I look at these issues when they happen in the main title, I'm always kind of looking for something new and like I give me those things as like a one off. Like give me the option to buy that versus the putting it in the main title. But yeah, it's good stuff. It's a great jumping on. It's a great breaking point to then transition into what we're going to get next.
And I do completely get your point. When I think the only one of those legacy ones that you were referring to from Onslaught, the only one of those I've read is the Thor one in the context of the epics, because I dropped comics before Onslaught happened, and I came back later, so I missed all the Onslaught stuff. But I read the Thor epic that had that, and I think I actually skipped that issue, to be honest. I was reading through some of that and was like, well, I've just read all of the epics that are printed, so this is kind of boring. Yeah. But Byrne does a great job of illustrating it in this one. So, all right. Any other final thoughts, Dozier?
No, I think we covered it. Double sized issue, double sized discussion. Good to go on, and I think what's our next issue? The X Men Annual with JR on art with Bob McLeod. So looking
Yeah.
forward to that.
Okay, cool. Well, again, if you guys have enjoyed our thoughts, follow us on YouTube. We're going to read, rate, and review a full Epic Collection trade paperback once a month. December 14th is going to be the next one for that, Avengers West Coast #1. And then, of course, these one-shots every day. And as Stoger just said, we're going to do the annual tomorrow. So we'll see you guys then.